Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to amazing humans about their journeys with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to introduce Melissa Gale to the conversation. Welcome, Melissa.
Hello, hi.
Hello, hi. So lovely to see you. As always, just going to do a very quick introduction to how we got to this episode, and I'm going to let you do a proper introduction, let people know a little bit about you, what you do, and where you are. So Melissa and I, we've been connected through LinkedIn for a while now. We do very similar roles actually in some of the work that we do in terms of training and supporting companies and organisations. But it's great to meet fellow sort of people who are inspiring others around mental health to help people through their journey. So it's fantastic to be here. We decided we'd get together. It's taken a little while to get the diaries aligned, but we're here now, so that's the most important thing. And it's lovely to have you on. So Melissa, just tell people a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I'm a mental health first aid instructor like yourself. I deliver it's sort of the 2-day course for youth mental health first aid and also adult as well. And I trained as a counsellor back in 2008. So that's really sort of the main thing that I do. I work as a counsellor privately and also within a charity setting as well, supporting adults with sort of complex needs, could be experiencing suicide ideation, and also in a school 1 day a week with secondary school young people as well. So that's mainly what I cover.
Brilliant. And so you're helping so many different people across so many different parts of the generation mix and everything else. So amazing stuff. No doubt we're going to talk about that because we want to talk about why you do it, which is sort of leading us into the big question.
Yes,
The big question is your journey with mental health. So you define what it looks like to you, but tell us a story. So I'm just going to sit back with the listeners and we're going to listen to you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh yeah, and please do ask many questions. As I said before, I'll interject at any point.
Yeah.
So my journey, where do I start? I think I'll start sort of back from a long time ago. So I'm in my 50s now, and actually I've always had an interest in mental health and well-being generally. In my early years of starting out a career, there had been a time when I had wanted to train as a nurse, but I didn't, and I'll sort of explain that just sort of very, very shortly. I've had a different working commercial background, and a good part of that has been in a very stressful environment working in recruitment. But when I was in my early 20s, or shall I go back even before then? I think in terms of doing the delivery and doing the training, and also through lived experiences, as in just getting older and wiser and all the things that we do experience as we're becoming parents and so forth as well. The insights that we gain about ourselves sort of start to stand out a little bit more, maybe, as to why we go down certain paths, certain routes. And when I look back to when I was a lot younger, I grew up in an environment which I had a parent who what we term now as a functioning alcoholic.
Okay.
And when I look back at those times, whilst it was a good childhood in so many ways, it was impacted a lot in so many other ways as well. And for me as a young person, made quite an impact in negative ways, sort of lack of confidence. I think really not having much of a direction in life, all sorts of things. And what I also am very aware of is that I had a lot of anxiety as a young person as well, just because of what I saw, heard, and experienced in terms of the impact of that alcohol and behaviour, because it wasn't very nice. Society accesses alcohol in so many different ways, and it can be fun and enjoyable and sociable. And for some people, if they access it too much and are reliant on it, it can impact them in very different ways, as in, they can become joyful and more happy, and others, their behaviour can show up not very pleasantly. So for me, witnessing what I did witness, the anxiety was there a lot of the time. I was always living on a bit of a knife edge. Never knew what quite to expect, what I would say. would hear. And I think as I became an adult, that anxiety also had an impact, I think, on sort of my whole immune system as well. And as I was a young adult, my health wasn't that great. I think I was very much on the edge maybe of developing an eating disorder, but I didn't.
Okay.
But I was very slight, and I was very always wanted to take myself out of the home and do a lot of activity and so forth as well. And I never really had too much of a sense of direction in my early 20s. And then in my mid-20s, I fell ill following a bout of flu.
Okay.
And I fell ill and developed chronic fatigue ME. And that I had for several years. And I was really poorly and I couldn't work.
Okay.
And I really do believe that chronic fatigue ME, this all ties in, I'm sort of going around the houses a little bit, but this all ties in also with mental health and the stigma and discrimination mental health. ME chronic fatigue, although it's become maybe a little bit more understood in recent years because of COVID, back then it was never understood. There was a lot of stigma discrimination around that. And a very difficult illness to recover from. So there was loss of job, finances, social life, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And as tough as things were with it, for some reason, I always felt that I would get better and things would be okay. And I never questioned that, whilst there were times when I questioned, how long is this going to go on for? How long is this going to be like this for? And after a number of years, I was sort of housebound pretty much the first year, but after so many years, I started to make headway, and I had to shut out all the noise of people and their opinions and so forth. Fortunately, at the time, I had a really supportive partner and my immediate family. And then the late 20s, I broke away from my partner, who I'd been with for some time. I was starting to get better. But because I'd been through what I'd been through, I was really questioning about life and what it was about and what I wanted to do. Did I want to go and do my nursing degree that I'd always thought about, but never had the confidence and self-belief in doing that? I wanted to get away from my hometown. I wanted to get away from the labeling of who I had become to others. And I was drawn at that time to look at an introductory course in counselling, which I pursued, and also embarked on my own journey of counselling, because I had started developing sort of anxiety in terms of, what am I going to do next? You know, I've been ill for this length of time. Who's going to want to employ me? You know, where is my life going? There's all these sort of anxieties going on. And I accessed counselling for a year, and the counsellor who I was seeing at the time was just incredible and amazing. Sat alongside me, so to speak, and went through my journey and my life story with me. And I just found that a most amazing and powerful experience, and that sort of really registered with me and stayed with me. Got to my 30s, and long story short, but got to my 30s, decided, because my health was getting better, just at 30 actually, and I took a leap of faith, even though I wasn't, my health was still sort of up and down. I took a leap of faith and I went off traveling, enrolled to become a nurse, and my life was going on this new trajectory. I didn't do the nursing degree, because actually when I went off traveling, I then met my now husband.
Right, okay.
But actually when I came back, I embarked and considered doing another step into counselling, another course. And then it went off at a tangent again, where I ended up in recruitment, and then I had family and I had twin boys and but I also, during that time, I still wanted to focus on then the mental health journey. So whilst I hadn't gone down the nursing route, I decided that I wanted to still pursue at some point the mental health and wellbeing from everything that I'd experienced. So I trained as a counsellor back in 2008 and continued with life and paying the bills and so forth, as you do. And then bringing it around to more recent years, 2017, I decided to take the plunge and pursue that avenue in terms of mental health and wellbeing, finally. And I haven't looked back since. And fortunately, within the charity that I support, I was really lucky to secure funding to train as a youth mental health first aider, which was being provided an opportunity with the local NHS CCG, because they were looking for somebody from the third party sector who could deliver training to their staff within their community setting. So that opportunity came about and I decided to go for that. Then realised what an amazing course the mental health first training is and how crucial it is for us to all have understanding of mental health, good health, not such good health, but actually how incredibly important it is for everyone to be aware of why maybe it starts in those early years and what we can all be doing in our reactions and in our support to young people. So Matthew, for you, I'm sure you'll be alongside this, you know, in terms of what comes up in those courses, you know, our frame of reference, you know, listening, really trying to be in that other person's shoes. The two courses, the adult course, the youth course, you know, they have a main core thread, but of course they're different because they're aiming at a different audience. But actually our young people become adults. And it's so crucial that the early years, especially, as a society, we try and support well-being and nurture positive selves, you know, a confident self, so that they become that way or able to deal with life's challenges as we get older. So for me, I feel really passionate about the youth course because the earlier years are so terribly important. And alongside that, also in terms of educating adults of all generations to have that greater insight and understanding about mental health in general, mental health, and that understanding of language, the understanding of hope of recovery, the understanding of not labeling, and that everyone is unique, and as you say, everyone has a story to tell.
Amazing.
So I don't know whether that gives you a bit of an overview of my story. I mean, I've gone a little bit all over the place, I think.
No, not at all.
It's the first time I've actually done that. So
that's all right.
I hope the audience can sort of gauge a little bit of how all the threads all came to one space and one place.
You know, I have to say, Melissa, I thank you for sharing that as well, because it did make sense. It did make sense, and I can see how you've come to where you are in your journey. And there's a piece in there, I hope you don't mind if we go back to it, which is where you had to get up and physically change everything that was going on because of, and you know, sort of said the word stigma, discrimination in there. Can you take us back to that point? When did you start to realize that that was the only way to get away from that, or how did that come about? How did it sort of show itself?
How did it show itself? Well, you just sort of, I think, especially, you know, Emmy, credit for it. I think it's the questioning, the questions that people ask, but it's also how they ask it, maybe. And it's that you know, it's that pensive look, as if I understand, but I don't really quite understand it. And they so just really, as I said, just really want to stress here, for me personally, I really do believe wholeheartedly ME chronic fatigue is a organic illness.
Right. Okay.
Like many illnesses, if you have an illness for a long length of time, it can impact on your mental health.
Yep.
Okay. I don't believe it's the other way around, which there used to be a lot of question marking around ME chronic fatigue syndrome. So I just really want to emphasize that. But just like more serious or mental health struggles or a serious mental health illness, often it's invisible. Okay.
Yep.
So when someone would see me seemingly normal, usual, in terms of, oh, I'm out walking for the dog for half an hour, but you're not working. Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
You know, oh, you must be, or you're laughing. Oh, for goodness sake, you know, because you're poorly, but you're laughing and you seem okay. Therefore, you must be okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot I think we have to, and I understand it, I can understand it, but there's a lot we have to be really mindful of, the fact that a lot is invisible.
Yeah.
And I would like to think I'm a very sort of positive, upbeat person, and that positive, determined, and a bit stubborn actually at times, and that can get in the way. But that stubbornness and positivity kept me going. But by all means, it was really, really hard at times, and really lonely. And it is really hard when you're being judged. And it is really hard when you just know that people don't get you.
Yeah.
They don't. Sadly, sadly that is a part of life. Sometimes there are not going to be people that get you, your process. And that's where I suppose there's a big part of who is there to support you, and where you have to dig deep somehow to know what's going on for you, what feels right for you, whether anybody else is saying or judging, that somehow deep down intuitively you listen to that and you go with that. And what helped me, there was a certain point, as I say, is I think I'm a great advocate and believer is that we have to look inside ourselves to put things right. And also, in addition to that, our environments play a huge part of that as well. You can have the most resilient person, most positive person, but if they're in an environment which is not conducive to supporting that, that can still weigh you down. And for me, when I started to be on that path of recovery from ME chronic fatigue, it's almost like others around me still had that label, still had that view and opinion of me as I had been. And I had to take myself out of that environment. And when I went off traveling, I didn't tell anybody that I'd had ME, chronic fatigue. And actually it was some years later that I started talking about it again. Because I just wanted to be known and people see me and judge me based on me. Not what I had experienced in the past. And now, you know, I've moved town. I mean, I did totally different place from when I was 20, and I'm in my 50s. That was back in my 20s. That's 30 years. It is literally a lifetime ago. When I go back to my hometown, sometimes I have people still ask me about that, and I'm like, oh, that was such a long time ago. And so, you know, when we come back to talking about the mental ill health, cliche, but we use it in our deliveries. You know, when we compare it to physical health, it comes, it goes, sometimes it stays with us and we need to manage it. But what we all need to remember is that people are not their labels, and we need to really hear people in front of us, really see people in front of us and get to know them. And in terms of this this whole opportunity and feeling very privileged actually to deliver the mental health training, and I feel very humbled to sit with my one-to-one clients as well, who are amazing. I just want to say as well, the clients that I sit with in the counselling room, they're some of the most strongest people I know. Their resilience has been amazing.
Yeah.
But actually, all of us only have so much capacity, and that's just being human. And at times we need that time out to get back on track and then get back into the demands and business of life. And whether that's mental health or your physical health, we all experience it in some way, shape or form.
Yeah. Great, incredible insights. And I think the thing that I take from that and the thoughts, you know, and it's very much in tune with what we talk about all the time, right? And it's that, I think the frustration I have is that people just don't realize that your mental health is changing all the time.
Yeah.
We tend to only focus on mental health often when somebody's really struggling, and it's like, well, that's, you need to notice when those things are changing, and then we can work through those sort of daily activities that help us to keep ourselves on the more, you know, maybe the more positive side, if that's even a possibility for people, you know. And it is just about that self-awareness. I think it keeps going back. I've had this on so many of these conversations, Melissa, and you'll understand that, where self-awareness is sort of the king of everything.
Yeah.
When you can take notice of things inside yourself that just don't feel right, you can actually do something with that. But it's when you deny yourself the opportunity to see that, or maybe you just don't know that that's going on, that it becomes much harder. Is that sing to sort of your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lovely little analogy actually that someone used, and I pinched it from them because I think it's lovely to bring up in the course. But actually, you know, there are often signs, and often, or they can be, that we do notice them and we ignore them.
Yeah.
And or life is just so busy, we really don't sort of acknowledge in some way. But you know, a little bit like if we think about the analogy I was going to use is about a car. You know, if you're driving around in your car and suddenly it starts making a funny noise, more often than not you're going to get that looked at straight away.
Yeah, true.
Because you don't want to get stuck on the M25. You don't want it to cost you a lot of money, so you get it looked at. But something about us, we know when we do notice, we just go, oh, we've got a bit of IBS, or we've got headaches that are starting to happen, a lot of migraines or skin conditions. We're not sleeping well. And yet there's something about our human nature which at times makes us just like, oh no, that'll be all right. Oh no, that'll be all right. And it carries on and it carries on and it carries on. And our bodies are amazing.
Yeah. And
eventually, if we keep ignoring the signs, our bodies will go, no more.
Do you think?
And we don't want it to get to that. We don't want it to get to that. We don't want to get to no more. You know, when crisis comes about, or suddenly it's really manifesting in panic attacks or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So again, you know, I think it comes down to, a lot of the time it's about our lifestyles, having time to notice, having time to breathe.
Yeah. And
allowing time to take care of yourself in some way.
Do you feel so if I can ask another question, really, from your insights and your perspective, the environment, the overstimulation of the environment, how do you feel about that's influencing mental health at the moment? And that could be more, that I'm not just talking about the global environment, you know.
No, I think it all comes back again to balance our situations, environments, relationships. Are you still there? Because your screen's frozen.
I'm still here. I am. I'm still here.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. It's just saying on my internet connection.
The screen is just frozen.
Life imitating art. My internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, There is absolutely, there's loads of stimulus these days.
Yeah.
There is just so much,
Yeah.
so much. And at times, depending on how we're feeling, you know, if we're in a good place, we might thrive in that. It might be really, really exciting. But again, it depends on what else is going on in our lives. You know, for young people, for instance, I don't know, this is just my personal opinion. But, you know, once upon a time, especially in my younger years, the world was a much smaller place. You know, we only had access to 4 TV channels. You know, we didn't travel as much as we did. And stereotypically, right or wrongly, you know, dad was out of work, mum might have been part-time, maybe a bit more out of work, just starting to. Everything was just a little bit sort of smaller in some way, whereas today's world, for our young people, for instance, there's just so much information to access, and often mum and dad both have to be out working as well, so they have their own stresses and demands going on for them. Social media that's coming at young people as well. So I think all of this information is like, where am I? Who am I? What's going on? Who are my peers? Who are the role models? You know, there's just so much information going on, so much. And I think it gets really difficult for us to, and for adults as well, to sort of align to where we feel or fit is right, because there's just so much choice and so many options.
Yes. Yeah. And
you know where do I fit into all of this? Where do I fit into all of this? What should I shoulds, what should I be doing? Life's expectations.
Well, we're comparing a lot more nowadays than we ever did, I think, as well, aren't we? You know, so we can see everything that everybody's doing, versus it used to be just those very few people that you saw or noticed around you. Now it's, you can compare yourself against somebody across the other side of the planet on what they've got and what you haven't got. And I do, you're right. I think the world was smaller and now it's much bigger, and bigger doesn't always mean the size of the world has changed. It's just the way that the world and the information and the flow of things, the stimulation, which is why I think the environment, especially when we're talking about younger people, it's a very different world to where we grew up, you know. And I think we're at that age where we acknowledge that, we accept that. You know, we can't use language anymore but back in my day we did it like this, and which is fine. It's a statement, it's a matter of fact. Can't get back to that because we're not in that day anymore. The world has evolved and things have changed, and some of it's good and some of it's not that good, and it's
so much faster. It's so much faster. I mean, do you remember, you know, on a Sunday everything shut down?
Of course,
everything shut down. Maybe the garden centre was opened up until midday, I think, but everything stopped. And there is rarely, it seems, do things stop now. Rarely do we have time to just, what am I doing? Even for young people, you know, it's go all the time.
And then it's, I'm bored and I don't have anything to do. And it's like, actually, sometimes that's not a bad thing, right? It's nice to have nothing to do for a minute, just so you can just rest. It's incredible. It's incredible. We are coming right to the end of this, Melissa. It's sort of half an hour just flies by in the blink of an eye. It really does. So I'm just going to say huge thank you firstly, and I'm going to just pass it back to you just to say final thoughts from you, words of wisdom or any words of encouragement that you want to send to anybody that's listening or watching this. So thank you.
Thank you. Final words of encouragement. I'm a great believer in that we intuitively, if we sit with ourselves for long enough, we intuitively know what serves us well and what doesn't. So my suggestion, I think, would be to try and allow yourself some time to sit with yourself and have a sense of that gut feeling of what is conducive to your overall well-being and what is not. and in turn do more of what is good for your well-being and do less of what isn't.
Amazing. I agree 100%. Do more of what's good for you and less of what isn't, and that is so true. And it's where people struggle a lot. We do too much of the stuff we shouldn't and not enough of the stuff we should. Focusing on that, taking notice, that gut feeling of when things are starting to change, things are going not so well, take notice and adjust for it, or at least try to see what you can do to change that behavior or habit or whatever it is that you might be starting to spiral into. So Melissa, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights. You're an amazing human. I absolutely love the fact that you were willing to jump on and do this conversation, to just tell us a bit about your journey and your story as well. I think you're brilliant, and we'll share your contact details with people. I'm sure you're okay with that. Are you okay with that?
Yes,
sharing?
yeah,
So if anybody does want to reach in, or they do want to have a conversation with you, or anything else in between, then they will do, no doubt. Just for everybody that's listening, if you are still there, if you are worried or struggling or need extra help and support, please know there are always people out there that are there to listen. Samaritans, of course, it's a wonderful organization. You can call them free on 116123 any time of the day, 365 days of the year. You could also text to shout 85258 if you need that extra help and support. But there are many people out there, Melissa, myself, and all the other wonderful people that I've had the privilege to sit down and listen to and talk, with on these podcast episodes. We're all here because we want to support conversations. That's what this is about. It's a conversation. Thank you so much, Melissa. Really appreciate it. Look after yourself. Good luck with the business and everything else that you're doing. And we'll stay in touch, of course, which is amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, and you. Bye-bye. Bye.